King Alfred the Great. He was the king in England, and he was reigning from 871 until 899. He has the title the Great because his dominant personality, and also because he was so relentlessly defending England against the Scandinavian Viking invasions. He was married to Evelswita, a Mercian princess, Mercia, one of the 7 heptarchies of England at the time, and they had 3 daughters and 3 sons. And he made an agreement with the Vikings that they stayed behind the line in the north and east of England. Then in 886 he captured London, Alfred the Great, and that made him basically the king of all England. And he could read and write, and he was translating books from Latin into Anglo-Saxon. He encouraged that people learn to make gold and silver work. For example, he translated Bede's, a scholar monk, Ecclesiastical History of England, and also Anglo-Saxon Chronicles was compiled by him about the history of England before the Romans arrived. And also was he on good terms with the Pope in Rome. And he translated a pastoral rule written by the Pope Gregory in Rome that was an advice to bishops how they should govern. He was studying and interested in how kingship should be, what duties and responsibilities come alongside with it. And he made a treaty with King Offa of Mercia, the king, and they founded together the first permanent fleet of England so that they could, with ships, engage the Viking invasions already on the water. And there's a story told, and that story tells that he was one day with very little money, King Alfred, and he came into a woodcutter's hut, and when the woodcutter's wife told him to watch over the cakes so that they don't burn in the oven, he forgot them and they burned, and the woodcutter's wife yelled then at him, "Now we all don't have supper." And when the woodcutter's wife's husband came in, and he recognized the king and said, "You have yelled at the king," and then she broke down and was a bit sorry. That is the story. Now, and that is all according to the history of the kings and queens of England and Scotland, written by Edmund Swinglehurst on the page 14 and 15. Hi and welcome. I'm trying to learn medieval history or medieval studies. Today, Alfred the Great, and after we've done it, we're gonna do stretching. And if you participate in the stretching, then it's with your obelisk. Alfred the Great, 871 until 899, reigning time. Born Wantage, Berkshire, around 846. Parents, Ethelwulf of Wessex and Osburg. We had Ethelwulf done in history. Ethelwulf, that was the king of Northumbria, and he was the first one to adopt Christianity, and also in his kingdom was Bede, the scholar priest. And ascended the throne on the 4th April 1871, crowned at or possible Kingston upon Thames, 871. Married Evelswita, a Mercian princess. Mercia must be then of the princess of the region Mercia, in the center of England. Children, 3 daughters and 3 sons, including Ethelfled or Ethelfleda of Mercia and King Edward the Elder. Died on the 26th October 1888 and buried in Newminster Abbey, Winchester. Newminster Abbey. Okay. By 796, Wessex, that is the center in the middle, down in England. Wessex on the Celtic fringe of Western England. Was ruled by Ecgberht, sometimes thought of as the first king of England. Ecgberht's grandson was Alfred, known as the Great, for his dominant personality and the relentless defense of his kingdom against the Viking invaders from Scandinavia. So from Denmark and Scandinavia, there were Viking invasions along the east coast of England, and then Wessex there was now the King Alfred fighting against them, is here written, and he was doing that with such a resolute opposition that he became basically the king of all England. Let's read here on. After routing the Danes, he allowed them to stay in the settlements that they had created in the north and east of England. Alfred agreed that a line between London and Chester would define their respective territories, while Alfred would remain overlord of the northern section as well as king of Wessex. So he made a deal. And there's also a line drawn. It's very little. So became the king, not just King Alfred's resolute opposition to the Danes made it the most important member of heptarchy and Alfred the monarch of all England. He was basically the strongest defender for some reason, and he made a deal with them. And they kept the eastern part, and he became the ruler of many of the other regions. Alfred agreed that a line between London and Chester would define their respective territories, though Alfred would remain overlord of the northern section as well as king of Wessex, which he was. In 886, Alfred captured London and so confirmed his title as king of all England. So he captured London and was now the king of all England. He also made a treaty with King Offa. King Offa was the king of Mercia. With King Offa to combine their forces against invaders and began the construction of a fleet to ward off incursions from the sea. He was married to Aethelswitha, a Mercian princess. So with a Mercian king, King Offa, and he married a Mercian princess, Aethelswitha, he made a deal, a pact, and to fight against the invaders. So King of Wessex and King of Mercia against the Scandinavian and Danish invaders. Against the Vikings. And also began the construction of a fleet to ward off incursions from the sea. So not just defending as soon as the people landing on the shoreline, but also to encounter them directly out on the open sea. Alfred was an educated man who could read and write and translated works from Latin into Anglo-Saxon. There were few like him, for scholars could be found in monasteries. I think that the part of the scholars means there were people who could read and write in monasteries, but there were not. He was still one of the few people who could read and write, and who was also translating from Latin to Anglo-Saxon. One of these was Bede, a scholar, a monk scholar, who wrote the Ecclesiastical History of England. So he wrote a book, Ecclesiastical History of England. Another history, compiled under Alfred's rule, was the Anglo-Saxon Chronicles, a history of England from before the arrivals of the Romans. So one book made by Bede, the scholar monk, Ecclesiastical History of England, so about religious aspects something, and another book was written, Anglo-Saxon Chronicles, about the time before the Romans were there. So before Christ even. This is around 900. Alfred encouraged learning and craftsmanship, especially gold and silver work. During his reign there was considerable activity in the translation from Latin manuscripts and the encouragement of the building of churches and monasteries. So many churches were built, monasteries were built, people were encouraged to learn crafts, and also the translations made from Latin into Anglo-Saxon. He was on good terms with the church and an admirer of Pope Gregory, who was a shrewd politician, I don't know what shrewd means, and had written a book of advice to bishops called Pastoral Rule. So he was on good terms with the Pope in Rome, and the Pope in Rome had written a book which was an advice to bishops and called Pastoral Rule. Alfred translated the book, finding in it good advice for all those in power over others. Okay, there was the Pope Gregory. He had written a book for the bishops all, with advices how they should work with the people. Alfred read it in Latin and he found it good, and he wanted that all people who were ruling over other people should know about it, and therefore translated it into Anglo-Saxon. His study and concern of kingship and its duties and responsibilities was one of his best qualities. So I think he was interested in how to govern how to govern successfully. One of the, let's read first the timeline. 871, Alfred succeeds his brother Alfred as King of Wessex. 876, southern Northumbria is colonized by the Danes. Southern part of Northumbria, also. Mercia is partitioned between the English and the Danes, 877. Danes invade Wessex. Alfred takes refuge on the Isle of Athenay and prepares his force against the great army of Guthrum. The questionable story about Alfred burning the cakes took place during this period. We're going to read that in a moment. Alfred defeats Guthrum's army at Erfeldun in Wessex. 886, Alfred captures London and fortifies the city. 890, Alfred builds the first permanent fleet of warships in England, ready to engage Viking ships. 891, Alfred starts to compile the Anglo-Saxon Chronicle, written in Anglo-Saxon, the language spoken by the people rather than Latin, the language of a church. 894-895, Alfred translations Orosius's Historia Adversus Paganus and Bede's Ecclesiastical History of the English Nation into Anglo-Saxon. 899, Death of Alfred, probably in Wessex. One of the best-known stories of Alfred concerns him burning the cakes. This story tells that when his fortunes were at their lowest ebb, Alfred sought refuge in a woodcutter's hut. One day, the woodcutter's wife asked him to watch over the cakes which she had placed in the oven. Alfred, preoccupied with his own problems, neglected the cakes and allowed them to burn. On returning, the woodcutter's wife yelled at King Alfred and said, "Now none of us will have any supper because of you." When the woodcutter came home, he recognized the stranger by the stove. He said to his wife, "This is King Alfred." The woodcutter's wife bowed to King Alfred's feet and said, "I'm sorry that I shouted at you." So it's just the story. There's no moral out of it, or no longer thing. And no end of it. It's just a story. Maybe we're going to read something else if the story goes on. Okay, we read now the double page. We're going to come back in the next part of medieval studies or medieval history. Then we're going to read it again, and then we try to make a presentation out of these information about Alfred the Great. If you were here for medieval studies, then you can go directly to the next part of medieval history studies. Then we will continue with it. If you stay here and participate in the stretching, there's better here on the screen. The feet is standing together. Open with one foot, the other foot. The heels, toes, and so on, as far as you can go. And back in again. This time stay down in the knees. Shoulders wide apart. Breathe in with the outside. And breathe out and out to the side. Again in. Out to the outside. In. Out hands down and slide down to one side. Breathe in. Out on the elbow. Breathe in out the ribcage. And out. Again in. Out the other hand down. Breathe in. And out. Breathe in out the ribcage. And out. Have the feet then standing together. In the arms up. Out one hand down. Reach. In and up. Out the other one down. Reach. In and up. Out, down. And the feet shoulder wide apart. Breathe in, shoulder circles. Breathe out. And front, up, back. And breathe in the arms up. No, first the shoulders up. Out and down. In and up. Out. In the arms up. Then we reach all this with one hand high up. Pretend to take an apple hanging high on an apple branch. To turn it a bit around and let the pluck out. And last two. And a bit further apart with the legs, arms to the sides, breathe in. And out, outside. Okay. Out to the other side. And out onto the knees. Breathe in. Out one shoulder in front. In and back. Out the other one in front. In and back. Out one in front. Back. Out one in front. Back. Breathe in. Then out and hang down. Breathe again in. And out one leg. Breathe again in. And out to the other leg. Breathe again in. Out into the middle. And close your feet, but keep on hanging down. Breathe again in. And out. Again in. And out comes slowly with your round back up. Make it the top of backward, shoulder roll. The torso pointing to the outside, breathe in the arms up. And out and sink down, elbows against the insides of the knees. Breathe in, straighten up. And out and come with the back up. Breathe again. And out and down. And then straighten up. Out again, back. Again in. And out. Breathe in, straighten up. And out comes slowly in one straight line upwards. Hands again. Have a good standing leg. The knee of a not standing leg on top of the knee of a standing leg. Breathe in. And out. And if you can do it for to injure yourself, breathe out and sit down. Up again, change. Up again to the sides, breathe in alone. And breathe out through the shoulder blades together. Again in. Out. Again in. Out. In and up. Out. Breathe in and close the legs. And breathe again out. It was stretching. I thank you very much and have a nice day.